Muslim. As a New Yorker, I am Jewish. As a New Yorker, I am black. I am gay. I am disabled. I am a woman seeking to control her health and her choices.
Hello. That man will not be mayor of New York City. May God help us all. Once the great capital of the world, New York City, is going down in flames. We will be covering that and much more. Hello, I'm Dave Rubin. I am not disabled. I am not black or any, well, I'm a couple of those things, I suppose, but I don't really care about those things. I'm not a pandering buffoon like that idiot who, the thing is, Cuomo, before we get to the real nut of the show today, Cuomo really regrets killing all those old people now, because remember he killed all those old people during COVID. He sent them all back into the homes. Old people vote. He killed his entire voting base, and there is going to be a little LARPing jihadist likely to be the mayor of New York City. Did I say this is the Rubin Report? I'm Dave Rubin. Subscribe, all that stuff. We're crushing it in the subscription game. I think we got the percentage for you right up there. Still, almost 60% of you don't subscribe that are our regular viewers, but we got another like 5,000 subscribers yesterday. We're about to cross. We're like, what are we? Just about 40,000 away from that 3 mil mark, with over 60,000 subscribers in the last 2.5 weeks or so. Thank you guys for crushing on that. So click that subscribe button on YouTube and on Rumble. Appreciate it. Also, real quick, we're hiring. We are expanding once again. We're looking to add a social media manager to the team. Do you know how to use Pinterest? Are you on MySpace? Well, let us know. There's the info. You can go to daverubin.com/social media. And what's another defunct? Were you on Parler and part of a revolution? Let us know. And just two other quick housekeeping things real quick. As we mentioned, we're completely sold out of Copal. But if you follow us on the Instagram at drinkcopal.com, we will be restocked probably in about 3 weeks. So we'll start I guess at that point, it won't be a pre-sale. We'll start the full sale then, and everybody else should be getting their bottles within the next week or so. And now I do want to mention one personal thing up top, because I want to give a great shout out, a huge shout out, like with the most humble humility and love and support for an organization called Gray Bull Rescue. If we could just put the image up real quick. I didn't want to mention it over the past 2 weeks because I thought it might relate to some security issues and a few other things. But my sister and her husband and 3 kids were trapped in Israel for the last, basically 10 plus days, 2 weeks. They were in and out of bomb shelters the entire time. As a matter of fact, for a couple days, they were in the same bomb shelter as Anderson Cooper, and she sent me selfies. He didn't see that he was in the selfies, and I said, listen, I'm loved in Israel, but you don't tell anyone in Israel, if they're a CNN anchor, you don't tell them you're brothers with your Dave Rubin's sister. But she was trapped there. It was very, very complex to get them out. There's still a lot of people trapped because even though the war in essence has wrapped up now, the airspace isn't open, Ben Gurion Airport isn't open. And the guys over at Gray Bull Rescue and Jay Collins from here in Florida particularly, I want to give a major shout out to, they were able to get my sister and her family. Her youngest is 2 years old. It was a hell of a trek. They had to get them on a bus over to Amman, Jordan. My brother-in-law is Israeli, so an Israeli going to Jordan, not necessarily the safest thing. Thankfully, he had his American passport. They went from Jordan, had to stay in Jordan overnight, to Cyprus to Miami. Cyprus to Tampa, and then Tampa to Miami. It was quite a trek, but Gray Bull Rescue is getting thousands of people home safely, and there's a long list of people that they're still getting out. So major shout out to Jay Collins and the guys over at Gray Bull Rescue. And I just didn't want, that was compounding everything that's happened in the last 2 weeks, which I think actually is quite a net good for, the world and America and all that kind of stuff. But it was obviously a bit of a stressful time. It was doubly stressful, and I just didn't want to complicate things by mentioning that. So anyway, welcome home, Tal and everybody else. Okay, let's get to the show, because there are good things happening in the world. And we had a 12-day war that I think now opens up the opportunity for peace on the horizon. And as I always say, not utopian peace like we're all just going to love each other and it's just going to be this magical Pollyanna-ish thing, but a peace where countries will now realize whether you love the other guy or not, whether you're holding on to some of your ancient hatreds or not, whatever the issue, the idea of state-sponsored terror, of threatening your neighbors, of murder, rape, shooting rockets into other people's territories and all of those things, the day of that is over. And the day of that is over because of Donald Trump and, well, basically Donald Trump and Bibi Netanyahu. Netanyahu, for who knows how long he was working on this operation. Trump finished it up, and Iran is basically done as a state sponsor of terror. They have a lot of internal things they're going to have to fix. We'll see what the people do there. But the other Arab countries didn't get involved in this, as I said, and there is a reordering of the world happening. You might call it a pivot or perhaps a reset. Here's JD Vance on that.
And when you left the White House, were you thinking this was all gelling here?
When I left the White House, I thought that we might be able to get it across the finish line before this broadcast, and it looks like the president has been able to do that. I mean, look, he's been working the phones constantly. Frankly, before the 12-day war started, but certainly over the past 12 days, the president's been extremely clear about America's national objective here. It is to create a world where Iran cannot build a nuclear weapon. We, of course, destroyed the nuclear program that they had, and the president told the entire team, we're going to work to make sure that they don't try to rebuild that nuclear capability in the future. And it's, look, this is a great thing. For Israel, think about this. They've accomplished an important military objective. They've helped us destroy the Iranian nuclear program. They've also destroyed the conventional missile capability of Iran that threatened the country of Israel. For the Iranians, I think this is a new opportunity to actually pursue the path of peace. As I said yesterday, what the Iranians have showed through their support of terror networks, through their now failed effort to build a nuclear weapon, is that they're just not very good at war. And I think the president really hit the reset button and said, look, let's actually produce long-term peace for the region. That's always been his goal. I actually think when we look back, we will say the 12-day war was an important reset moment for the entire region.
Reset, pivot, shifteroo, whatever you want to call it, it's here, and those conditions are right. Trump, 10 years of saying Iran's not going to get a nuke. Well, now Iran's not going to get a nuke, right? We know that now. At the very least, they are seriously degraded in their race to get a nuke. So could they reset and try years from now? Perhaps. But do you think it will be in the back of some nuclear scientist's head? Boy, if I do this, I could end up as goo on the street. Probably. So it's going to be a lot more difficult. So that's check, win for America. Trump coming through with exactly what he promised. As JD points out, check, win for Israel. They basically have destroyed Iran's conventional weapon system. Yeah, they could still shoot a couple rockets every now and again because there is a ceasefire, so not everything was taken out. But within basically 2 days, they had complete control of a country's airspace that's probably about 50 times larger than them, and they took out all of the leadership and had Khomeini hiding in a bunker. Win for them. But then the third win is the key win here. It's a win in some sense for the Iranian people if they're able to take back their country. And you can actually argue it two ways. If they take back their country, it's a win for them. But even if they can't quite take their country back, to whatever extent the Iranian leadership and the mullahs still exist, they have to realize at this point, you can't mess around with America anymore. At least America for the next 3 years. And at least Israel for the next 3 years, because you know they're going to bomb the hell out of you if you start shooting rockets again. And you just don't know what Donald Trump might do. So this is now the signal that has been sent out to the world. Once again, exactly what Donald Trump offered. Exactly what he offered in Saudi Arabia. Enough of that nonsense. Let's think about this whole thing in a new way. And if you want to get on board, the good times are coming. And I really strongly feel that. And that's why I'm so proud to, not even proud to have been right about this. I'm proud to have supported Donald Trump along the way, even during the parts of this that I didn't know which way it was going to go. Now, here's JD. This is a different interview, but I just thought this was just kind of a funny story that gets to the heart of just like the goodness of Trump.
And the president looks over at me, puts the foreign leader on mute and says, "This is not going very well," and he presses the red button. And my eyes get really big, and I'm like, "Mr. President, you know, what just happened?" And he looks at me and he goes, "Nuclear." Nuclear. And 2 minutes later, a guy walks in with a Diet Coke, and he looks back at me and he says, "It wasn't nuclear, it's just the Diet Coke button." And that's... So that's the kind of guy, and my fellow Republicans, that we have as the President of the United States. Trust me, in Washington, D.C., they have this thing where I think it means we're number one in Washington, D.C., but all the pink-haired people throw up this sign, and I think, that means we're number one, right? I choose to take that as that symbol in Washington, but...
Yeah, it's like it's light and it's fun again. And that story just about the Diet Coke button, it just rings so true, doesn't it? So Donald Trump, not only is he doing good things, but there's still a human there. And JD, again, he has just been such an all-star in all of this. He has a way of speaking off the cuff. Don't forget that debate. That debate, I think, will go down as one of the greatest, people, how do you rank VP debates? Do they ever really matter? But in some sense, that VP debate did really matter because JD, people didn't know exactly what to make of him. This was a guy who was radically anti-Trump only, 4 or 5 years before. And he absolutely crushed that. And where Trump is great at all of the bumper sticker stuff, JD is really great at the granular stuff. So it's a nice story and obviously the number one thing and all that. And here's JD explaining actually that there are literal good things happening, not just Diet Cokes being delivered to the Oval Office.
Now, if I had stood here in October of 2024, and you had told me that after 45 days of the Trump administration, we would have illegal border crossings down between 95 to 99%, I would have said, whoa, whoa, whoa. I believe the president is very serious about this, and I believe the president is very effective. But there is no way that we're going to have illegal border crossings down that much, and I'm happy to report that 1.5 months into the Trump administration, we had illegal border crossings down 99%. It was a radical success, and it happened very quickly.
So it's that line that I love from DeSantis, decline is a choice, and we finally chose no more decline. And it's no more decline whether it's because we're cleaning up our borders or we're exerting power, peace through strength again, all across the world. We're showing people we're not going to be taken advantage of on trade deals, and we're just doing it. And look how quickly we did it. And also don't forget how close we got to the precipice of something that could have been much worse. We're going to talk about what happened in New York City yesterday in the Democrat primary, but that could have been scaled. That disastrous progressive movement could have been calcified had Biden, Kamala, Auto Pen, secret conglomerate of people won. And Donald Trump put on Truth last night. What Biden did to this country should never be forgotten. And I think it's really important. I love those moments. You guys know I love throwback clips, whether they're throwback clips from 50 years ago or 20 years ago or from a year ago. I think it's important to show people the way things used to be or the things that people did wrong or the things that people got right, like when I show you old clips of Donald Trump in the 80s on Phil Donahue, because it puts a pin in something that otherwise we just end up spinning off into, it's just like spinning a top and it just whirls across the table and we never remember from whence we came. And I think it's time we start acknowledging that things never had to be this way. The last administration, so much of, let's say, some of the legitimate fears of there were some legitimate fears by people who were against Trump doing what he just did in Iran. There were a lot of people saying, well, what about sleeper cells? Now, could there be Iranian sleeper cells in the United States? The answer to that is obviously yes. We played you video yesterday of Tom Homan saying there's over 1,000 unaccounted Iranian nationals in the country somewhere. 10% of those are bad. That's about 100 of them. And 10% of those guys are really bad. That's about 10 of them. You can do an awful lot of bad stuff. So is it possible that they exist? Sure. But do you want the nation that might have the sleeper cells here to also have nukes? No. So we want to acknowledge the moments when we get something right, which Donald Trump has just done. And here's Stephen Miller, who has a way of laying out the wins pretty cleanly.
Let's just take a moment to think about how historic this moment is and what President Trump has achieved in this 12-day war. Presidents going back to Bill Clinton have said it is the policy of the U.S. government not to allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon. But under every president except Trump, Iran marched closer and closer to being able to put onto a ballistic missile a nuclear warhead that could take out an entire city. That has been the direction Iran has been going in year after year. President Trump took action flawlessly through the United States military to obliterate Iran's nuclear sites and to stop them through the use of military force from having a nuclear weapon. It was a bold, courageous action, And it happened without a single leak, without a single solitary service member losing their life. Everyone said, who was a critic of this action, that it would lead to World War III, and instead we have a ceasefire, and instead we have the beginnings of a new era of stability and peace and security in the Middle East. President Trump, once again, has demonstrated that he alone has the wisdom, the judgment, the strength, and the courage to see this nation through the most dangerous challenges we face around the world, Sean.
Isn't it something that's like you can actually see it materializing right now in front of our eyes? And this is what Donald Trump is great at. Most people are good at talking. Bill Clinton, you're not going to get a bomb. Barack Obama, you're not going to get a bomb. By the way, we're going to give you a lot of money, et cetera, et cetera. But Donald Trump actually, he doesn't just talk. He talks and then he does. But whether you want to call it a pivot or what Stephen Miller just called right there, the new era that's appearing, you can actually see it materializing. And that's what happens when Donald Trump or when anyone that's a mover or a builder, when they actually do something, the repercussions of that start spreading out, right? You throw a rock in the water and then the waves start moving around and then things start changing. And that's exactly what's happening right now. Now, Miller did make a point that the critics of Donald Trump, and I'm not talking about, there was plenty of lefty critics who are going to be critical of Donald Trump no matter what, so let's just ignore them for a moment. The critics that he's obviously referring to there, that it's going to be thermonuclear World War III and everything else, he's talking about people on the right. He's talking about Tucker Carlson, who said that we would lose, I think he said thousands of American lives, and that it could start World War III, and Alex Jones, thermonuclear war every day, tweeting it in all caps, and the usual list of people that have I would say, traded on utter hysteria, who have been completely unmasked as total frauds and grifters. Now, I would say you can get things wrong. You can get things wrong. That is very different than pushing your audience to the ultimate end of hysteria. I get things wrong. Decent chance I'll get something wrong on the show today. It happens. But that's fundamentally different than taking your audience and basically doing like a Munchausen by proxy, like you're sick. There's something wrong with you. And then when the good thing happens, right? Donald Trump then wraps up the war in 12 days. Then they basically try to take credit for it. Well, it's because we were pushing back against him. And it's just complete nonsense. And to that point, James Lindsay, you guys know James, he's been on the show many times. He put up this poll, which is rather extraordinary. So this is a CBS News poll. And listen to this. This is U.S. airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities among Republicans. 94% of MAGA Republicans were for it, 85% of Republicans overall. So there are some Republicans who don't identify with MAGA, let's say, but 94%. That is an absurd amount. And only 6% disapprove. And James wrote woke right hardest hit, meaning there was this set of people. Again, it was the Tucker, Alex Jones, whatever, blah, 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 who for months and months were ramping up hysteria of all of the horrible things that were happening. And I would say this, as I said many times, I was begrudgingly, or it was not bringing me any pleasure to go after Tucker the way I did, but at some point it just had to be done. I would say this for someone like Tucker or Alex Jones: you've taken your audience to the precipice. You were completely wrong. You, I would say, lied repeatedly and fake emotion and all of that stuff. Well, okay, now like have a mea culpa and be like, boy, how about just get up there and I would do it. I would damn well do it. I was wrong. I was wrong about all of that stuff. And I got a little caught up in a bunch of craziness and blah, blah, blah. That's on them. And I will leave that at that. We're going to talk about Rumble Premium for a minute and then more on the other good things that Donald Trump is doing.
Free speech is under attack, but Rumble refuses to back down. We've always believed in empowering voices, no matter how unpopular, and now we're taking that fight to the next level. When major advertisers conspired to pull their dollars, even brands like Dunkin' Donuts turned their backs. But we're not here to fit a mold, we're here to defend free expression. To strengthen this mission, we're excited to offer Rumble Premium, a completely ad-free experience with exclusive benefits for viewers and creators. You'll find exclusive content from creators like Russell Brand, Dr. Disrespect, Timcast, and the Mug Club with Crowder. It's more than a subscription, it's a stand for free speech. Your voice matters. Join Rumble Premium. For a limited time, you can get $10 off the annual plan using promo code Rubin. Visit rumble.com/premium/Rubin and claim your discount today. Whether you join Rumble Premium or simply keep watching, your support helps keep free speech alive.
Let me just mention one other thing before we move on related to that last poll. You know, if that's right, and that's an ABC News poll, so it's not friendly to MAGA, but if 94% of MAGA was for this and is happy with the results, what does that also tell you about the disconnect? And I don't know how we arbitrage these things, but the disconnect between, say, the online media muck, right, versus what the average person who's not obsessed with politics, who isn't on Twitter all day, blah, blah, blah. Those two things, there's a disconnect between those. Because if you would have looked online for days and weeks and months before this, the people that were the most critical, the people that were relentlessly going after Israel and criticizing Donald Trump and screaming about World War III, they were getting all the clicks and the views. So it was an algorithmically manipulated mind virus in some sense, right? We talk about progressivism as a mind virus, but that mind virus was getting all the clicks and everything else. And then when it came down to the moment where something was done, it turns out that those numbers, in essence, were all fake because we have no idea how many of those people are from the United States that are clicking like all day long. We showed you that Chinese bot farm the other day where they can literally have an AI machine just clicking like and retweet and AI messaging people in the comments and everything else. So that's something that I'm going to focus on a lot going forward, because the disconnect between the digital world that we are all sucked into the matrix in this thing every day versus the real world where Donald Trump then does something and everyone's like, yeah, that was pretty good. Oh, and I had nothing to do with any of the screaming about that. Let's get to some other good things that are happening. This is from Donald Trump on Truth, heading to NATO, where at worst it will be a much calmer period than what I just went through with Israel and Iran. I look forward to seeing all my very good European friends and others. Hopefully much will be accomplished. So they're heading over to NATO, and here's Donald Trump, I think he's on the plane here, talking about a little conversation he had with Putin as it related to Iran. This is kind of funny. Take a look.
You know, I'd like to see a deal with Russia. As you know, Vladimir called me up. He said, can I help you with Iran? I said, no, I don't need help with Iran. I need help with you. And I hope we're going to be getting a deal done with Russia.
Again, doesn't that just ring as true? These little offhand stories that Donald Trump tells you, that he got a call over the last week from Putin in the midst of the Israel-Iran thing, Putin going, maybe I can help broker a ceasefire, or maybe I can take some of the exiled leaders, or who knows what the specifics were. And that Trump basically was like, I don't need help on that. What I need help is wrapping up the other thing that you're, I don't know, a bit involved in, this Russia-Ukraine situation. So again, we don't know. This thing, the Russia-Ukraine thing seems more intractable, ironically, until Ukraine is really willing to concede something. That's what it seems like to me, rather than the Israel-Iran thing, because Israel clearly was planning this for a long time and Trump just went like that and it ended overnight. Here's Trump landing in the Netherlands, which is where the NATO summit is, arriving at the King's residence, and Zelensky, look who got a suit. Somebody went online to Nordstrom and got a suit. Fancy, fancy.
And we now see President Trump stepping out of Air Force One as he's arriving in the Netherlands for the NATO summit.
Mr. President, please. One picture.
That's not allowed. You know it.
Can we take photos for the president?
Nope.
These aren't official photographers.
They're closed. Okay.
All right, so there was Zelensky. Did you catch him there? Can we get a screenshot of that real quick? People like to see Zelensky in a suit. Zelensky in his, there he is. You see him over, a couple over Trump's left side there. Is that the left side, or am I looking at this thing backwards? Do I look at my monitor backwards? Can I call that? Trump's left side, yeah. I never know if the monitor's backwards, the one that I'm looking at. But look, he got a suit, no tie, but it seems to be some sort of ninja suit. He thinks he's in the Matrix, I think. He's Neo or something like that. But look, you just look at that picture and it's like, there's a leader again. And just imagine what all of these people that are standing there with Trump, whether it's Starmer or it's just any of, I mean, look at all of them, even Erdogan next to him, Macron, all of these guys, they're like, oh, there's a leader again. And just think the stark contrast between what we saw when Joe Biden did international trips and wandered off and didn't know where he was, and they were basically babysitting him and everything else. Here's video of Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, talking about how, well, I can't believe it, guys. Some of the other countries in Europe and places like Canada, they're going to start spending a little bit more because, yeah, the days of just sucking off the USA, those good old days of blowing the USA, they're over.
It will also be a massive achievement in making NATO fairer. For decades, the United States sought to get Europe to truly step up. Now, European allies and Canada will equalize their defense spending with the United States. So let me salute President Trump's long-standing leadership in calling for NATO to increase defense spending. Today, I am pleased to announce that NATO has already added an additional $1 trillion in defense spending over the past decade. Mr. President, dear Donald, that is thanks to you pushing us. And tomorrow we will build on that foundation and add trillions more in defense spending, because we need to do this.
It really is extraordinary, guys. That line, Mr. President Donald, this is because of you pushing us. How crazy. All Donald Trump said for years was like, these guys should pay in. Why are we paying for everything? We're just getting taken for a ride. And then he was like, no more of this. You guys pay. And now they're literally thanking him while they are putting in their own cash. Do you see what American leadership with sane, competent people in charge can do? And again, if this was Biden, Kamala, auto pen, group of amorphous blob people, none of this would be happening. Now, apparently, this one, I haven't seen this clip because they just threw it in moments ago. Apparently, this just happened. This is Trump responding to Mark Rutte there. He called Trump daddy, and I guess Trump probably liked it. That's going to be my guess. I have not seen this clip. Let's see.
It's from Sky News. Mark Rutte, the NATO chief, who is your friend, he called you daddy earlier. Do you regard your NATO allies as kind of children?
No, he likes me. I think he likes me. If he doesn't, I'll let you know. I'll come back and I'll hit him hard, okay? No? He did it very affectionate. Daddy, you're my daddy.
Do you regard your NATO allies, though, as kind of like children, and they're obviously listening to you and they're spending more, and you're obviously appreciative of that, but do you hope that actually they're going to be able to defend themselves, defend Europe on their own without...
I think they need help a little bit at the beginning.
Again, it's just obvious leadership, and it's real from Trump. And years and years and years from now, when they study everything about Trump, how he did this entire thing and how he captured the world's imagination and how he came back and how he had the wherewithal to say fight, fight, fight when he got shot and all of these things. It seems to me that the thing about him that is like the key part of it is that he is in that moment all the time, right? Like he is seemingly unbelievably present, maybe. Maybe that's what it is. He's more present than anyone we've ever seen in public office before. He actually listens to the question, responds to it appropriately using humor, and I'll let you know, and I think he likes me, and we'll see, and if not, I'm gonna hit him. Like it's all real within the circus that this all is. It's all real. And the fact that Marco Rubio gets to laugh. I mean, Marco's doing such an incredible job. And as I said, he's kind of number one on my top 10 list, which, as I also mentioned, that in our newsletter, daverubin.com/newsletter, we're going to be allowing you guys to vote on it every Friday. And then we'll post your order every Monday going forward. But the fact that Rubio's even laughing about that, Rubio's doing a great job, but you don't see Rubio laugh that wrong. Like Rubio's usually kind of like this because he's dealing with some serious shit. Anyway, the guy who got a ninja-like suit, Volodymyr Zelensky, here he said, together we will definitely be able to protect lives and achieve true security and peace. And again, just think of the difference of the tenor right now. So they're all sitting there to the backdrop of the Iran-Israel thing wrapping up real quick. So now Trump can basically say to them, guys, you see what we just did over there? And whether Putin's obviously not there, but like, you see what we just did over there? Can we now focus on this and clean this thing up? And Zelensky's signaling that it's maybe. Again, in some sense, ironically, the Russia-Ukraine thing is more intractable than the Israel-Iran thing because Israel went in with such overwhelming force, right? Where now we're seeing like a slow slog of a war with a big country, as Kamala would say, and a little country, but it is just like this endless slog that has been funded to the tilt. And unfortunately, if you just keep funding things and giving people weapons on both sides, well, then the war will just continue. But I think Donald Trump is going to change that. Another thing Donald Trump has significantly changed is our attitudes towards health here in the United States, of course, by bringing in Bobby Kennedy Jr. We will have more on that in just a second. But first, Tax Network USA.
This month, Tax Network USA is celebrating American Pride Month with 10% off all services honoring freedom, resilience, and financial independence. If you missed the April 15th deadline or you have back taxes, don't wait. The IRS is ramping up enforcement fast. Penalties can hit 5% per month. The good news, Tax Network USA can help. Whether you're self-employed, run a business, or your finances are a mess, their experts know how to get results. Consultations are free, and acting now could save you from wage garnishments or bank levies down the road. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/Dave to get started. Take advantage of this month's sale for 10% off.
You guys want to get away from war for a minute? Well, let's get away from war and talk about our health, because each one of us should be doing the best we can. And by the way, I just weighed myself this morning, lowest weight in 6 years as of this morning. Oh. Wow, I didn't expect that. That was very nice. Check this out from Reuters. U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. met the major health insurers on Monday, extracting pledges that they will take additional measures to simplify their requirements for prior approval on medicines and medicinal services. Insurers, including United Health Group's United Healthcare, CVS Health, Aetna, Cigna Group, Humana, Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, and Kaiser Permanente, met with Kennedy and Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator Mehmet Oz. The Department of Health and Human Services said in a statement, the health insurers pledged 6 key reforms aimed at cutting red tape, accelerating care decisions, and enhancing transparency for patients and providers, HHS said in a statement. Participation in the pledge is voluntary, Oz said in a news conference. 3/4 of U.S. patients are covered by participants in the pledge, he said, adding that CMS will publish the full list of participating plans later this summer. There shouldn't be paper, there shouldn't be faxes, there shouldn't be letters being sent. They should all be done digitally and automatically, and 90-day continuity should exist when for authorizations when patients switch insurers, so you never fall through the cracks again, Oz said. Out of about 6,000 procedures that are subject each year to prior authorization, only about 2,000 to 3,000 should require the process, Oz said. You know, if I can just quickly say on a personal note, I think I mentioned this a few months back, but before Trump took office, after he had nominated a few people, including Bobby Kennedy and including Mehmet Oz, I was invited to a small dinner at Mehmet's house. And Bobby Kennedy was there, and Mehmet was there, and Jordan Peterson was there, and Sly Stallone, Sylvester Stallone was there, which was the coolest thing ever. And a few other people were there. It was probably about 20 people. And the point of it, Mehmet invited these people over to discuss what they thought, how can we fix healthcare altogether? Like, it was not only how can we fix healthcare, but then how can we fix messaging around it? How do we have to leverage the online influencers and all of the things? And it was really one of the most enjoyable evenings that I've had, like impactful evenings with serious people trying to fix things. And I know I've mentioned this part before, that one of the things that Bobby said during that was that he was so shocked by the amount of people who had built businesses, who were millionaires and billionaires, who now wanted to work for the government, many of them offering to do it completely free. I mean, it's not like the government's going to pay you a ton anyway. And look at these people who have stepped in. So Bobby didn't need this gig. Mehmet is worth $1 gajillion. He didn't need this gig. David Sachs, who's now in charge of crypto and AI, I think he's a billionaire. He didn't need this gig. So we now have seriously good people who were chosen because of their skill set and their dedication and love of the country, rather than their genitals or lack thereof. Here's Bobby Kennedy talking about the importance of ending pre-authorization when you want to go to a specialist. We've all been through this.
He posed that question to Dr. Cutler. He said, what is the single most important thing that we could do to improve the patient experience in this country? We could do very, very quickly without regulations and without legislation. And Dr. Cutler immediately said to him, you can convene the insurance companies and get them to voluntarily agree to end the scourge of pre-authorization. So, today, because of President Trump's leadership, we are agreeing to this momentous and monumental achievement. And we hope to see the dividends of this success story immediately materialize as a better experience for millions, hundreds of millions, literally, of American patients.
Okay, so clearly, like, there's a seriousness, the people up there, you get it, like, these are qualified people. The idea of encouraging, right? Like, I don't think they want to force the insurance companies to do anything, But the idea of encouraging the end of pre-authorization would mean that you wouldn't, if you knew something was wrong, right? Like specifically, and you have to go to that specialist for sure. Pre-authorization, you wouldn't have to deal with your health insurance company first to make sure that you're allowed to go to that doctor. You wouldn't have to go to your general doctor first, right? Your primary care physician, so that he can tell you you can go to that doctor. It removes a step. It removes paperwork. Joseph's giving me the specifics on it right now. Prior authorization works by ensuring that services are medically necessary and appropriate for the patient's condition, right? So that's the idea of why you would want prior authorization, but that step largely becomes nothing. It becomes an extra visit to the general doctor. So now you've wasted his time. He has to do paperwork. And then it causes more and more people often not to go to the doctor at all, because they're like, just to go to the specialist I know I have to go to the general practitioner too. So it's just removing steps, and that is probably good. There aren't that many people that are just so excited to go to the specialist without reasoning. Anyway, Bobby has just been doing a consistently bang-up job with all of this. Here he is at a congressional hearing, and Representative Frank Pallone is going after him, and well, take a look.
You have made a number of major decisions about vaccines, and again, there's been no public comment process or public accountability on that either. What are you afraid of? I mean, with regard to vaccines, are you just afraid of receiving public comments on proposals, or you just think these are fringe views that are contrary to the views of most scientists, and that the public comments will reflect this? You say you want transparency, but there's been no public process for any of this.
We have a public process for regulating vaccines. It's called the ACIP committee, and it's a public meeting. There will be public comment at that meeting.
You fired the ACIP.
I fired people who had conflicts with the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, I mean, that's...
That industry, that committee has been a template for medical malpractice for 30 years.
I can't...
All right, we'll have a bit more on Frank Pallone in just a moment, because Bobby was not done with him. But isn't it interesting the way they do everything? When you talk about the deep state or the swamp or the machine or whatever it is. So Frank Pallone, I don't know much about this guy, but here's Representative Frank Pallone, and he's very concerned that Bobby doesn't want transparency as it comes to vaccines. Now, I'm old enough to remember a thing called COVID. It was this sort of imaginary thing where you coughed a little bit and then they locked you in a room and you weren't allowed to go to your grandmother's funeral. Some of you may remember it. And you had to wear a mask when you were at a restaurant if you walked in, but then when you sat, suddenly the virus couldn't get below 5 feet. The whole thing was pretty wacky. But in any event, how were they when it came to skepticism or openness or asking the public about their feelings, say when you didn't want to be injected with their magical vaccine that wasn't a vaccine, or if you just wanted to, I don't know, take a walk in the sunshine without wearing a mask, et cetera, et cetera. So they don't care about any of these principles until they see that someone is coming in and fixing things, which is exactly what Bobby's doing. And now here is Bobby. He was clearly ready for this little back and forth with Pallone, explaining that maybe Pallone himself was on the dole.
If I can take a minute just to respond to something that Congressman Pallone said, and I'll address you, Congressman Pallone. 15 years ago, you and I met. You were at that time a champion for people who had suffered injuries from vaccines. You were very adamant about it. You were the leading member of Congress on that issue. Since then, you've accepted $2 million from pharmaceutical companies in contribution, more than any other member of this committee. And your enthusiasm for supporting the old ACIP committee, which was completely rife and pervasive with pharmaceutical conflicts, seems to be an outcome of those contributions.
Point of order. Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
point of order. Point of order.
The chair recognizes
Point of order.
Dr.
The gentleman is impugning the reputation of a member of Congress.
Well, sometimes it's worthy of impunation. I think that's a new word right there. But okay, so basically 15 years, and that's just, again, it's like, it's sort of the thing that Trump does. Like, you know, when Trump will be like, all these people hate me now and they used to ask me for money. It's the same exact thing. Like, it's like 15 years ago, dude, you were all about vaccine skepticism. Does your shift on this have anything to do with the $2 million? And you got to love Pallone looking at his general counsel and the lady next to him, not even paying any attention, not even listening. But this is what they get away with, or I should say what they have gotten away with for a long time, and the gravy train seems to be coming to an end. Let's talk about 17 What in God's name is going on over there? Let's talk about 17. Are you all right? All right. There might be an injury in the studio. We're going to have to talk about 1775 coffee for a minute, get the cast, and then we'll talk about the failed impeachment of Donald Trump.
You know that feeling when your coffee actually does what it's supposed to do? It clears your head and lifts your energy. That's what good coffee is supposed to feel like, and that's what you get with 1775 coffee. Their coffee's organic, single origin, high altitude, and small batch roasted. That means no toxins, no acidity, and no jitters. Just smooth, clean coffee that fuels your day without weighing you down. From bold, everyday roasts to brain-boosting mushroom blends and anti-aging formulas, 1775 has the functional coffee option to match whatever mission you're on. Whole bean, ground, or pods, your morning just got an upgrade. Go over to 1775coffee.com. Use code Rubin for 15% off your purchase and enjoy some coffee.
All right, don't worry, everybody. Phoenix is okay. The makeup cabinet fell over. You're all right? You're all right over there? He's got mascara all over his face. It's a big mess. Truth from Donald Trump, because they tried to impeach him again, these dingbats. Here we go. Stupid AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, one of the dumbest, I like how he puts dumbest in people in quotes, like that doesn't need to be in quotes, she is. Dumbest people in Congress is now calling for my impeachment, despite the fact that the crooked and corrupt Democrats have already done that twice before. The reason for her rantings is all of the victories that the USA has had under the Trump administration. The Democrats aren't used to winning, and she can't stand the concept of our country being successful again. When we examine her test scores, we will find out that she is not qualified for office, but nevertheless far more qualified than Crockett, who is a seriously low IQ individual, or Ilhan Omar, who does nothing but complain about our country. Yet the failed country that she comes from doesn't have a government, is drenched in crime and poverty, and is rated one of the worst in the world, even if it's rated at all. How dare the mouse tell us how to run the United States of America? We're just now coming back from the radical left experiment with Sleepy Joe, Kamala, and the auto pen in charge. What a disaster it was. AOC should be forced to take the cognitive test that I just completed at Walter Reed Medical Center as part of my physical. As the doctor in charge said, President Trump aced it, meaning I got every answer right. Instead of her constant complaining, Alexandra should go back home to Queens, where I was also brought up, and straighten out her filthy, disgusting, crime-ridden streets in the district she represents and which she never goes to anymore. She better start worrying about her own primary before she thinks about beating our great Palestinian Senator crying Chuck Schumer, whose career is definitely on very thin ice. She and her Democrat friends have just hit the lowest poll numbers in congressional history, so go ahead and try impeaching me again. Make my day. Is that literally the best post he has ever put? That has everything. It's all in there. He's getting better, people. It's weird. So yes, these dingbats who do hate America, the Palestinian representative, I love that. Like, it's all so good. They did try to impeach him again. You remember Al Green, this man who seems to be morphing into a disabled werewolf with his beard that keeps going up as if he's in Teen Wolf. Michael J. Fox, great movie. I'm going to say 1985. Can we get a check on that? What year was Teen Wolf? And here's video from C-SPAN showing that the impeachment attempt failed. 344 representatives voted against Crazy Al Green.
Let's see. On this vote, the yeas are 344, the nays are 79. The motion is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
All right, that's less important. I did nail it. Teen Wolf, Michael J. Fox, came out in 1985. What year was Back to the Future? Probably, it took place in the movie 1985, so it probably came out in 1984. What do we think?
1985?
1980, so it came out in 1985 too. Hot diggity damn, good year for Michael J. Fox. Anyway, the impeachment is just nonsense. Obviously, it's completely ridiculous. The fact that they had over 100 Democrats that voted against it too shows these people, as radical and psychotic as they are, they do have a little something called self-preservation. And they knew if they went all in on this, as we show you poll after poll after poll, of their party bottoming out and the support for Trump growing and a great 12-day war win and a border that's closed, et cetera, Like sometimes it's just obvious. Here's Charlie Kirk over on Fox News talking about how ridiculous the move to impeach this guy amidst all the wins is.
How could they be against what's going on? We have peace in the Middle East. The killing has stopped. The shooting has stopped. There's no nuclear weapon. The American people overwhelmingly support this. And this is the day they decide to impeach Donald Trump. What are they trying to impeach? Peace? They're trying to impeach that there's no nuclear weapon. I mean, it's such a political loser for them. It shows that they are pathologically determined to oppose Donald Trump no matter what he does. I mean, what are they going to say? No, we're going to overturn it. And we want the nuclear weapons to go back. It's outrageous. It's wrong. It's unpatriotic. And I take great exception what the Democrats are doing.
Anti-Trumpism, Charlie, has left them with only being now anti-peace. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's right. It's like, what did you even think? Like, even for 1 second, AOC, I get your intentions are not good, and I'm tired of people, oh, she means well. Like anyone that voted for Trump's impeachment, what did you really think was happening? There's zero chance they thought it was going to get through. And again, we showed you the videos yesterday of all of the Democrats in years past, when Obama lobbed rockets and caused Libya to be a failed state, or when Bill Clinton shot rockets into Syria, and all these other things when they did it without congressional authorization. Like, did you really think this is the one you were going to get Donald Trump on? Completely ridiculous. The other thing they're trying to get Trump on now is they lied about the timeline as it pertained to Iran getting a bomb, and they're trying to get Trump on that now. Watch this. So listen, this is truth from Donald Trump. Fake news CNN, together with the failing New York Times, have teamed up in an attempt to demean one of the most successful military strikes in history. The nuclear sites in Iran are completely destroyed. Both the Times and CNN are getting slammed by the public. So the Times and CNN and several other places are saying that no, the nuclear sites were not hit as hard. I did some double checking this morning. There's no evidence of that. Israeli media is reporting that they have been set back massively. But really what they're trying to do, the very same people who a week ago were telling us, no, Iran is years away from getting a bomb, or Iran doesn't even want a bomb at all. Suddenly, now that we've bombed those things, they're saying, oh, it only delayed it by a few months. I mean, this is rather extraordinary. Check this out from Mazemore, who does great work on Twitter. CNN last week, U.S. intel says that Iran is years away from a nuclear weapon. Trump then bombs Iran's nuclear facilities, and CNN today, U.S. intel says that Iran's nuclear program has only been set back by a few months. This is CNN, predictable as ever. I mean, it's rather extraordinary. They don't mind telling you a week ago, they're years and years. Then we bomb the shit out of it, which I assume is going to delay at least, I don't know, a couple weeks, and now it's only months away. And here is hack news anchor, not journalist, actress Erin Burnett on CNN, and watch her flip-flop literally within a week.
This timeline of Iran being a few weeks away from a nuclear bomb is in direct contradiction to CNN's reporting. According to U.S. intelligence assessments, Iran is 3 years away from being able to produce a nuclear weapon if they wanted to. So the facts on Iran getting a nuclear weapon do not bear out the claim at the heart of what has put the world on the verge of world war. It only set back the Iranian nuclear program by months. We got to call it like it is. It's a big deal.
5 days, lady. Have you no shame? Now, first off, I don't trust CNN sources either way. I personally would trust Israeli intelligence that clearly has been working on this operation for 20 years and knew what's what. But even if you don't trust them, let's say you don't trust the Israeli intelligence, you don't trust American intelligence, you don't trust Trump. CNN themselves, there she is saying, okay, it's years away. And then 5 days later, it's only been delayed a few months. Like, you're just interchangeable parts. You're just paid millions of dollars to sit in that seat to repeat nonsense for the regime. Do you not? It's not the regime right now because Trump's president, but for the machine rather than the regime would be the way to say it. They have absolutely no self-awareness. And speaking of no self-awareness, we have not shown a clip of this lady in a while. She is unemployed, as far as I know, but she's making the rounds again. We used to play a lot of clips of her. Here, I'm not even going to say her name. Let's put it this way. She's crazy. She's racist. She's a blonde sometimes.
And it was like a rumor. We were like, nah, we hadn't heard anything. Nobody had called me. Nobody had said, you did something wrong. You're in trouble. You're on probation. I had gotten nothing. Then I get a text message early the next morning saying, can you talk at noon? And I was fired immediately. There was no warning. So and I asked, well, what's nothing. They were just like, oh, we just want to make some changes. They never said why. So I've had to live in the rumor mill with everybody else.
So you still don't really know
No.
Well, I'll tell you. Can we get this clip directly to her? You were fired because you are a far left America-hating hack who was pushing racism and gender confusion and self-hatred to, I don't know, 12 or 13 Americans. Not many people watch that thing, thank God. But you were just not very good at your job, lady. So did you need someone to come to your office and tell you that? You were rather unpleasant. Your ideas are bad. You just got that gig. You got into college. I think you said you got into college because of affirmative action. And in essence, you got the job because of affirmative action. And you just weren't very good at your job. But if there's one thing that journalists are not good at, it's self-awareness. They simply are not. So here's Chuck Todd again. And you know Chuck Todd, he was NBC's Meet the Press guy. He got fired because he was a failure there. So then what happens? You become an anchor on CNN. And when you're an anchor on CNN, you do other shows with CNN anchors who aren't very good at their job. In this case, Jake Tapper, a man who covered up the Biden mental condition and then wrote a book about it and then did a major press tour on CNN about it. And here's Chuck Todd and Jake Tapper talking about how they just probably shouldn't listen to their critics because they're better than you.
How do you handle, I can't tell you when the switch flipped, but it flipped for me right around about a month or so after the lockdown, where it's just like, remember, it doesn't matter. Journalists are not meant to be popular. Who cares? Yeah. You know, we're all human beings. You know, there's always moments where you probably feel defensive and you want to say something, but you've learned not to do it. I've learned not to do it.
Right.
When do
nobody
you think
feels
that switch?
Nobody feels bad
and nobody
for us.
should. And nobody should. I don't
Yeah.
want them to.
Right.
I'm not interested in it, which is why I'm not going to do there. I'll call you up and bitch and moan, right? We can exchange texts and go blah, 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 right? All that stuff. But for a long time, you and I were both really active on social media in a different way, right? We would engage. We'd engage positively and negatively. When did you feel like, it's not worth it anymore? When did you flip that switch?
I don't know when it was exactly, but it just became clear at one point. I do remember one of the first experiences I had with social media where I'm like, oh, you'll get criticized no matter what you do on this.
The self-righteous nature of this is so absurd. First off, Chuck Todd saying journalists aren't meant to be popular. Who cares? Actually, journalists that expose the truth, that actually go after power when it should be taken down a notch or when it's doing something nefarious or illegal, you can be incredibly popular for that, right? Of course you can be. But journalists who hide the truth, journalists who lie about very fine people and COVID and blah, 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 you get it? Well, then you're going to get smacked up against the wall and you're going to get hit when you're on social media. So that's one part. And then Jake, it became clear one day that these people were criticizing you too much. Well, because you lie about pretty much everything. The irony is, and Phoenix even said it before we started the show, these guys aren't, if you look at the top 10 list of awful people involved in mainstream media, it probably doesn't even include these two. Right? Because there's so many like really horrible ones, whether it's Sunny Hostin or Rachel Maddow or some of the other ones. But the inability for these people, like, trust me, I go on Twitter, I block people all the time. People say horrible things to me. Do I bitch and moan about it here? Do I go on other oh, but somebody used to call me like, it's pretty bad stuff they say about me sometimes. But okay, it is what it is, and you move on, and it's your choice to look at it or not. But you guys want to, in some sense, what you're really saying is we should be above criticism, because what you're trying to do there is basically make it seem like, oh, we're just telling the truth, and everyone online is a bad actor. But again, I think you got that a little bit backwards. Speaking of backwards, New York City, once the Big Apple, once literally the center of planet Earth, and the greatest city on Earth, a city that I lived in starting in 1999 until 2013. I was there for 9/11. Most of my formative struggle years of being a starving comic in New York City were all there, the good times and the bad, just literally at times barely having $20 and just trying to make it and all of those things. New York City, do I have to tell you why New York City is great? Like, no, you get it. Except it ain't great anymore. And listen to the results of the Democrat primary last night. Zohran Mamdani, big Hamas supporter, he got 43.5% of the vote. Andrew Cuomo, the failed governor who's gay and black and a woman and disabled and has a series of other problems apparently, he only got 36.3% of the vote. Brad Lander, who's just a progressive loser nobody, he got 11%. Adrienne Adams, never heard of her, never going to say her name again. But this is an absolute disaster. Look, New York City has choice ranked voting, so you can vote for more than one person. In essence, you say who you want to go up first. But they have chosen this guy, Zohran Mamdani, to be the Democrat nominee. Now, in the fall will be the main election. So he's not mayor. Let's be clear about this. This was the Democrat primary, but Democrats always win. It hasn't been since Rudy Giuliani that there's been a Republican mayor. And ironically, what happened under Giuliani, the city was safe and clean, and Times Square had suddenly Disney characters instead of crack addicts, et cetera, et cetera. But they've gone through a long list of Democrats, and Democrats usually win in New York, and we'll see what happens. Eric Adams is going to run as an independent. He's the current mayor, who's been pretty much a big disaster himself. So there's a series of problems that they have here. But Charlie Kirk, I thought, nailed it quite nicely. The Muslim socialist running for New York City mayor, Zohran Mamdani, is also obviously a con man. The only people dumb enough to support him are college educated. This poll is the single most damning indictment of higher education in America that I've seen. Mamdani is Mohammed Mao. So look at this. For this, according to Emerson College, which they do quite good polling, Cuomo leads Mamdani among voters without four-year college degrees, 61 to 39%, while Mamdani leads Cuomo among college-educated voters, 62 to 38. So the more educated you are, in some sense, the dumber you actually get. Does that surprise you, knowing everything we know about Harvard and Columbia and Yale, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So it's ironic. It's ironic. It's the educated elites who are going to usher in the thing that will destroy the city more than anything else. And I suppose in some sense it's not ironic, because often the educated elite become so out of touch that they usher in all of the bad ideas. Here is video of Zohran calling out Donald Trump.
We have won because New Yorkers have stood up for a city they can afford. A city where they can do more than just struggle. One where those who toil in the night can enjoy the fruits of their labor in the day.
That wasn't the clip of him calling out Trump, but a city they can afford. He is a socialist. He calls himself a Democrat socialist. And of course, they don't need the word Democrat. He's a socialist. And what he's talking about, city they can afford, he is talking about massive rent controls. And what does that do? Well, that's like socialism 101. You tell people who build things, we're going to have all these new regulations and you're only going to be charged this much. The market is not allowed to decide. And over time, what happens? People get trapped in a cycle of poverty. Nobody wants to go to a city like that and build and innovate and everything else. And then people also become resentful of the people who own things. So they're going to instigate a class war. I said it yesterday, and I've been saying it for weeks. If you are Jewish, it does not matter if this guy wins or loses in some sense. In the fall, get out of that city. There are going to be pogroms in that city. It is obvious. And if you want a little more of just his radical nature, here's a tweet by him from not too long ago. This is about 2 years ago. We need to ban all guns. That is as radical a position as you can possibly have. We need to ban all guns. He's not leaving much room for wiggle room right there. How is it possible that you are allowed to even run for public office if you take a position, if your primary position is so oppositional to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights? Ban all guns. Sorry, that's a constitutionally guaranteed right. It's in the Bill of Rights, Second Amendment. Try to read it, motherfucker. Here's another one from this clown. We don't need an investigation to know that the NYPD is racist, anti-queer, and a major threat to public safety. What we need is to defund the police. How did that work out for you guys during the summer of love? Well, you all know how it worked out. It was a disaster. The police are anti-queer. Half the police officers are queer now because all the old school cops moved down to Florida, and we've got them down here. But congratulations, you're going to defund the police, and you're going to send therapists. You're going to send queer therapists. And there's a couple people mauling an old lady. We're here. We're the queer therapists. Why are you doing that? And this one's just bananas altogether. They now have Muslim patrol cars. He hasn't even become mayor yet. This is slightly disconnected, but they now have Muslim patrol cars that look like NYPD official police officer cars that are roaming the streets of New York City.
They're alarmed after seeing Muslim community patrols driving through their neighborhoods in what looked like police squad cars. One America's Pearson Sharp has the details.
New Yorkers say they're shocked after seeing Muslim patrol cars roaming their neighborhoods like police squads. These Muslim community patrols just began operating in Brooklyn this year, with members dressed like police officers and driving cars identical to police squad cars. Even other Muslims have raised questions about the need for the patrols, with residents expressing fears this is just another form of Sharia law enforcement. Area. Others denounce residents for drinking, claiming this is a Muslim area and alcohol is not permitted.
Yeah, alcohol is permitted, and there's no such thing as a Muslim area. There's no such thing. There might be an area where more Muslims live. There might be an area where more Christians live, or more Jews live, or more Sikhs live, or more Indians live, or something like that. But you can't have different laws in those areas. The fact that they are allowed to have cars that look like police cars is completely insane. And the question is, are they there to defend the Muslim community, which, by the way, would be the job of the police in the first place. The police not very good at defending the Jewish community, but it is the job of the police to defend all communities, period. It's the job of the police to defend the individual. But do you think these guys, how do you think these guys, if you're a Muslim patrol guy, you're driving around and you see a couple people, I don't know, Muslim guys drinking on the street, what are you gonna do? And what authorization do you have to do anything? So this is just another escalation of a failed city, and I'm just telling you, people, get the fuck out of there. But I want to end with hope. I want to end with hope because Mamdani, maybe he won't be mayor, because Eric Adams has been the mayor, and Eric Adams might be the mayor. Again, we'll find out, as he's an independent now. He's not a Democrat anymore, and he's going to run against Zohran. And here is Eric Adams, and if this doesn't make sense to you, if this doesn't inspire you to want to vote, right? We have Eric Adams here, right? No, I want to go with Eric Adams first. We'll finish strong with the other one. We have Eric Adams here explaining how great New York City really is. In a moment. I think it's coming in just a second. Here it is, any moment.
Everyone knows that New York City is the Athens of America. It's the Istanbul of America. It's the Kyiv of America. It's the Seoul of America. We are the Tel Aviv of America. New York City is the Islamabad of America. The Zagreb of America. We are the Lima of America. New York City is Mexico City of America. This is the Dublin of America, New York City.
And congratulations, New York. That guy who ruined your city and made it a sanctuary city and everything else, who does apparently never knows where, he doesn't even know what country he's in. He is your great hope because somehow the messaging from this guy failed.
I am a Muslim. As a New Yorker, I am Jewish. As a New Yorker, I am black. I am gay. I am disabled. I am a woman seeking to control her health and her choices.
So New York, as Jerry said to George, good luck with all of that. Post-game show, 30 seconds, Rubin Report.locals.com.